Josee, the tiger, and the fish tell a story about the life-changing choice to empathize when the rest of the world is heartless. Two souls who didn't see eye to eye at first, but grew to understand each other through the discovery of their circumstances. Josee, who masks her fear of the cruel outside world through hostility, and Tsuneo, who's unaware of the weight of her physical disability and her burdens at first. And in life, most of us act like Tsuneo does. It's easy to judge and blame people without seeing the world through their eyes. Sometimes others act so inconsiderate, rude, and downright evil, which justifies our reasons for hatred and dislike. But what if the only thing they truly need is for someone to understand them? And what if that someone could be you? That is what Tsuneo becomes to Josee. But it didn't start out like that. In the beginning, he didn't see any reason to empathize with her. He first met Josee when she came rushing down the road as someone pushed her when she and her grandmother were taking a walk. He ended up in their home where he was offered to eat and asked if he would like a job as Josee's caretaker. He accepted it, but he did not expect Josee to be so unreasonable and hostile, assigning him several impossible tasks like counting patterns on the carpet and picking up 4-leaf clovers. He grew frustrated and bottled up resentment towards her. In his eyes, she didn't deserve his kindness, and his reaction was understandable. He blames Josee for her own rudeness, as if to say, how can you expect empathy from others when you don't extend the same understanding towards others? Tsuneo's belief reflects a lesson most of us were taught as we were growing up, that there are only two types of people in the world, good people and bad people. And for Tsuneo, Josee falls under the category of being a bad person. When we see people like them, people with qualities we don't like, we automatically label them as evil, and every misfortune that comes along their way is suddenly deserved and justified. And that's how Tsuneo sees Josee. And maybe deep down, a part of him thinks that her physical disability is something she somehow deserves. But when we start to see people beyond their worst qualities, when we start to know the reasons why someone is evil, we start to realize that things aren't so black and white. Things that can't be labeled with a simple good or bad. Slowly, Tsuneo came to this understanding and entered the world of Josee. Tsuneo was ready to quit his job as her caretaker when he came across her room and saw paintings of the sea. It reminded him of his own fascination with the sea and the reason behind it. When he was young, he would often go to the pet store staring at a fish that caught his interest and thought, maybe this fish yearns to find his way back home too. His parents were divorced, and his mother barely spent time with him. That's why when he saw those paintings, he couldn't help but think Josee too has a tragic past. And he was right. It turns out that Josee lost her father when she was young and wondered what the sea tasted like. But before she could give him an answer, he died. And she continued to live with her grandmother, who kept telling her that the world was full of savage beasts as people treated her as an inconvenience. That is the reason for her cold behavior. Tsuneo saw the person behind the hostility, a fragile woman doing everything she could to survive. It's when Tsuneo realized that sometimes people don't act the way they do simply because they want to. They could be victims of awful circumstances, something they never chose. They could have been hurt carrying the wounds someone else gave them without ever having support. Because for Josee, it's more than just her physical disability. It's how people treat her with it. How people look at her with disdain, judging how incompetent she is, as if she were a burden more than a living person. And that could hurt anyone. I mean, can you really blame her for acting the way she does if people treat her as garbage when she hasn't even done anything to them? Tsuneo realized that she was simply reacting to how people treated her and tried his best to be patient. And so she warmed up and became Tsuneo's friend, probably her first and only friend. Yet, even with that in mind, of the person's circumstances, we still tend to turn a blind eye. Why is that? Well, empathizing doesn't come without a cost. You've heard of the saying, a burden shared is a burden halved, which is true, but that also means that their problem becomes your problem. Whatever consequences their burdens bring about also become your consequences. We too have our own problems, so why worry about others when we haven't figured out what to do with our own problems? Sometimes it's easy to stand from a distance and offer sympathy instead, because it takes so much emotional energy to put yourself in their shoes and swim through the same waters that once drowned them. And besides that, what if it turns out that the empathy we placed upon another person is misplaced? What if they use it against you for their own advantage? Most of us do not dare to take that risk. Understandably so. It's only when the cost is little that we can afford to show compassion. This, though, is not a bad thing. It's not our obligation to fix other people, but at the same time, it serves as a barrier for the people in need to get the actual help they need. If it wasn't for Tsuneo and Josee's commonalities of the sea, he would have never given her the time of day. And it's because he can afford it that he can extend compassion. But in a cruel twist of fate, he found himself to be in the same predicament as Josee. And then suddenly, he can't afford to extend his care for Josee anymore. As Josee was crossing the street after realizing that her dreams of becoming a painter weren't realistic since her grandmother died, she got stuck in the middle of the road as cars came blitzing at high speeds. Tsuneo tried to rescue her, but ended up with him getting hit by a car. He was alive, but whether he could walk or run again is questionable. In that moment, he felt like he lost everything. His dreams of going abroad and being able to dive in the ocean and pursue the home of the fish he fancied when he was little are dead. Ironically, Josee knows too well how he is feeling, as she is the one who went through all of this before. After all, isn't the core of empathy people's shared experiences? That's why she tried her best to make something for him in her own way. A picture book, a story of a mermaid, a tiger, and a man with wings. A mermaid who tried to seek land through a wish-granting shell that should only be used correctly was rescued by the man when she was attacked by a tiger. They journeyed together, sharing wonderful adventures, until one day the man had to leave. Heartbroken, the mermaid wandered alone, only to be attacked once more. The man returned to save her, but was injured in the process. Knowing the magic shell could make her vanish if misused, she still wished for his recovery. He was healed, but his wings never returned. Despairing over his lost dream of soaring the ocean skies, the mermaid reassured him that his true wings were those of his heart. With her words, he found another path, sailing the seas to fulfill his dream. And when the time came for the mermaid to face the shell's punishment, nothing happened. Instead, it told her this: wishing for another's benefit could never make you vanish. Her picture book was a story representing the both of them, how much Tsuneo's understanding meant to Josee, and the lesson she learned with her relationship with him. Caring for another person, just as Tsuneo did for her, doesn't mean losing yourself. Even if there are risks, even if we might get hurt, that shouldn't stop us from reaching out to those who need us most. I know not everyone might agree with that sentiment though. Some might say that it's better if we just mind our own business. And some of you might have even misplaced your trust and kindness before. I had too. Someone I went above and beyond for, only for them to take me for granted. Even so, I still choose to believe that empathy is the best gift anyone could ever give. Just because I misplaced mine on another one's doesn't mean I have to bury and forget about it. I still want to believe that people don't act unfavorably willingly. They do it out of protection, whether it be physically or emotionally. I'm not saying everyone should start extending their understanding to everyone who's lost. I'm well aware of how unrealistic that sounds. And I know we all have our own circumstances and problems we face. But what I hope to impart is this: what matters is being that one person amongst a sea of crowds who chooses to reach out and help. No one is obliged to reach out to anyone. But isn't that what makes the act itself so charged with meaning? I know that no one can change the world by simply doing this. But I know that through this, we can change someone's world. And that, I believe, is enough.